Hello.
Hello, Karen.
I'm Karen Sherwood, Director of Cupola Gallery, and I'm very happy to speak to Lyn Hodnett about her current exhibition, her solo show called Wild, Women and Nature at Cupola Gallery until the 9th of July. Lyn is sitting beautifully in front of a couple of her pictures, actually, and I've got one behind me. So, Lyn, tell us a bit about this body of work then. Why is it called Wild, Women and Nature?
Well, interestingly, I think somebody came to the exhibition opening and said, but all these paintings are you. And I said, well, they are and they aren't. They're of different women, but of course I'm embodied in all of them because you paint what you know. Well, I do anyway. And I paint from the heart, and I paint from experiences, things that I've seen, things that I've heard, particularly stories or situations, things that people have told me about, things that are resonant to my life and the life of other women. And years ago, a friend gave me a book, which I have here, called Women Who Run with Wolves. And she's a poet and playwright, M.T.S. Hussain, and she said, you must read this book. She said, it really reminds me of your work and of the spirit behind the things you do. So I read the book, and it's absolutely fantastic. And it's based on symbolism, in imagery and story. And it was about the sort of things that inspire me to make work. And it's got an overriding sort of feel to it about how women have maybe connect with nature. So a bit of ecofeminism, the way that we've been, I suppose, feel our links to nature, but also the separation from it. So like women holding fish and trying to have a conversation with it, things that appear in fairy story and in poetry. And those sorts of relationships with women and nature, I think, are quite strong in my work and always have been, whether nature is biting us and we're feeling like we're not a part of it for some reason, or if we are embracing it and we have become a part of it. So symbolism and story have always been a big part of my work. And I realised in conversations with other people that also that nature, whether it's Mother Nature or whether it's the nature within ourselves, is really a fundamental part of what interests me.
Absolutely. So this body of work, was it over what period are we talking, these images that have been got together? Because, of course, we've all been affected by the pandemic, and some artists felt that they had time to make work during that period, and other artists felt really kind of restricted by how their change of experience of life affected their ability to make work. So how did that work for you, and where does all this body of work come from?
Well, there's so many answers in there. Of course, there's themes that I have been working on for a long time, like the women and fish and women by the sea, but particularly the symbolism of moths being symbolic of spirit and of part of us, maybe afterlife, of change, of metamorphosis. And then the fish out of water, the fish being sort of part of us that is undiscovered, that we want to pull out of the sea and discover, or things that we're searching for, that we're fishing for, like the hunter-gatherers that we are. So all that symbolism has been going on for quite a long time. So I think I started to produce this body of work from that. And then other things that surround me or have entered my life in the last couple of years have made their way into the paintings. So birds play a really big part in my life at the moment, because I partly exist in North Wales up a mountain, and we are festooned with birds, woodpeckers, family of woodpeckers at the moment on the bird table, which is where that one comes from.
Yeah.
They're literally within 6 feet away from me most of the day.
Wow.
Crows, there are lots of crows, and of course with the idea of COVID and Corvid, I thought that was quite a pertinent bird. And we've seen lots of crows up in Wales. I mean, and they're called a murder when you
murder of crows. Yeah.
Crows, and there are a lot, and they descend on the property. They wake us up in the morning. They fight with the other birds. We've got cuckoos up there, So the bird thing, I think, is what is around me.
Yeah, sure.
Also, being inside all the time was quite interesting with the wallpaper. Because there's some pictures that I've got in the show that start off with that symbolism, but they also resemble wallpaper. Yeah. And I think we've all been sitting inside for so long. There's been a real upsurge in sort of wallpaper that's got like tigers and plants and foliage and birds on it. And the wallpaper people are buying costs a lot of money, and I've been thinking, well, has it superseded art? Have people been investing in wallpaper and not in paintings? And I don't know what we see on the inside of our houses. Maybe it's the COVID thing. We've been stuck inside for so long. And I've just been playing with that idea of wallpaper and taking what's behind my girls in my paintings and maybe making that into some pieces just on their own.
I've noticed that there's more collage in your paintings than there has been previously, and I do find that interesting because you're a painter and a printmaker, and you use both those techniques in your paintings. So you use printmaking techniques in your paintings, and you often do hand-finished prints as well. Your show is primarily mixed media paintings, aren't there? And there is a range. I said when I saw the body of work that there seems to be groups of work that go together. There are things that seem quite bright and uplifting and kind of colourful and almost joyful. And then there are things that are really quite dark. But that's, that is the experience of life, isn't it? Sometimes things are great and sometimes things are not. And it's really nice to see those things together. Interestingly, the darker does seem to appeal to customers, although obviously some do like the brighter pieces. I don't know if that makes us all miserable buggers up north, but it is fascinating to see how and why people relate, because I see a lot of stories in the work, and I talk to people about the stories, and sometimes I say, do you want to know the symbolism? Do you want to know the story? And sometimes people say, yes, give me some more information. But a lot of the times people say no, because I'd like to put my own story to them. And I think that's quite interesting.
They are personal and they're universal.
Yeah.
And I think we all experience similar things in life. The joys, the highs, the lows, the loneliness, the loss. You're interesting about the collage you mentioned. Yes, that came very much from my mum passed away just at the beginning of lockdown. And of course, moving out of the family home that I'd lived in all my life and going through the drawers and finding some hoarder, finding all this paper, notebooks, bits of wrapping paper, postcards. So I've done a series on the postcards that I collected from when I was 16 and first went to galleries from school trips. Yeah. So those postcards, I've done a range of about 25 paintings, taking the postcards and then adding my own painting on top, so that the paintings sort of work together. So it's whatever it's conjured up from me, but also the bits of paper, the things that I haven't wanted to throw away, I've wanted to keep something of. I've still got the bits of paper, but if I can employ them into a piece of work, and it might be an old shopping list, it might be some wrapping paper from when I was 12, it might be just a little fragment of something. I've been putting those into the collages and then painting on top, because they are the sort of fragments of daily life, of existence that we could throw away, you know.
Well, it's like the flour girls, isn't it? The flour as in FLOUR, as in the baking flour.
Well, I've been spending a lot of time baking in the kitchen because that's what I've done over lockdown. That's been one of my chief things. So, you throw the bag away and you think, actually, that's got some nice colours on it. Oh, I quite like the design on that. Right, I'm going to. Oh, look at that cupcake.
Because I noticed that I was looking at the textures and the the colours, and it took a while for the penny to drop and go, oh, that's a cake case, that's been painted over.
That's right.
And
lots of cupcakes.
Well, why wouldn't you? Yeah, cake is good. So it's interesting because you talk about you lost your mother, which is obviously a very traumatic, very dark moment. But often, even within the darker images, there is a sense of there's either a sensitivity or often there is a bit of humour in there as well. Because
like the play on the flower girls.
There's an idea. There's always an idea of hope, really. That there is an image downstairs which is Bluebeard's wife, and let's face it, that's a very dark story. But there's something about the image. There's something about the woman that is about taking control.
Yes.
However. Whatever the story is, there's an element that allows you to take that story further. There's an openness that you can read it, but also you can take it somewhere else as well. And I really like that. There's the image behind me. There's a woman with a boat now. The boat is symbolic, or it could be a toy, or it could be... There's so many ways you can read your images.
Yeah. Yes, good. I'm glad. Because we are many-faceted. I really want that story to be able to work on different levels. And I think the stories that we're told, the fairy stories we're brought up with, do have a lot of layers, a lot of levels, and on one sort of sphere they're decorative or they're just sort of a story, but on other levels they warn us about things. They say we have a power or a strength to get through something, to come out the other end being maybe having felt loss, having felt tragedy, having felt humour, whatever, but we've come out the other end. And I think and we've survived it. And I think that my paintings help me to survive things. I put whatever happens to me into doing something, cooking, sewing, painting, printmaking, because it's positive, because it creates something, and I want it to create something not just for me but for other people as well, to get us through whatever it is.
Well, interestingly, one of the images that is feels quite dark, but also it makes people curious, is the one called Daisy Wheels. Do you want to tell me about that?
Yes, well, up in Wales, I found some witch marks, which are called daisy wheels, and they were carved into a stone that's on the wall outside a building we call the Goat Shed. Also, I do improvised music, and we did a piece in the bishop's house, and there are daisy wheel witch marks on the doors. And I found those quite fascinating, with the idea of, I suppose, alchemy, the idea of change, the idea of time, of female power, all those things. And they're quite dark images. Again, the crow comes into that, and the three crows, or the three ravens, which I use folk songs or take images from stories. And so they appear in that painting as well. And there's a woman who looks quite manly, quite masculine, quite powerful, and in a sort of, she knows herself. And the crows are there as sort of familiars, and the daisy wheels to remind us of the power that we have, and the changes and the alchemy of life, I suppose. So it is quite a dark painting, and for me, it's about change and transformation that we go through. It's about the harder times in life, I suppose. Not particularly great painting to decorate your wall, but something that has quite a potent meaning for me.
Yeah, and resonance.
And informed by the place that I've been living.
Absolutely.
As well. Again, with the book Wild Women, why Wild Women? Because I think in the book that I've talked about by Clarissa Pinkola Estes, Maya Angelou says about it, everyone who reads this book should read it. And that's it's about contacting the wild woman in yourself, that powerful or learning natural force that we have inside ourselves, and trying to sort of harness it or bring it out or enlighten it somehow, or connect with it and have it as part of my life. I suppose that's what I try and do. I try and see what I'm going through through either my performances or my paintings or my poetry or whatever I'm doing. I try to look at my life and look at life that I'm going through and experiencing through channeling it through another vehicle, to be able to get a look at it. And wildness, whatever.
Wild is a great word, isn't it, actually? Because wild kind of sums up a bit of excitement, doesn't it? Kind of something raw, you know. It's go wild, you know.
You can't always control it because it's wild, but it's a nature that is there, that is in all of us, and sometimes it's deeper buried than others. But I do believe whenever we try to bring that creative wildness or creativity, if you know that's been in us from birth, out towards the surface a little bit more, we feel more whole and better. You know,
well, if you think about the term rewilding, I mean, why are we doing that? You know, in order to bring out the best. So, you know, wild is almost you're talking about kind of connecting to a core. You know, there's something deep that needs to come out to show, you know, who we are. And
I think that's whether internally or externally. I mean, where I am in Wales, we are up a mountain. There are no neighbours. There is nothing really. You know, we're virtually off grid. So it is quite wild. If you don't strim it, it will overtake you.
Right, absolutely.
The mice are coming in. The squirrels are eating the windowsills. You know, it is like that. So. And I think we have been trapped in our houses. You know, when I've been in Sheffield over COVID, we couldn't really go out to see anybody, though I did have that natural world there that I was part of. But it's been hard. It's been difficult for all of us. We have been sort of maybe less wild in some ways. So I think the 2 years of making the majority of that body of work from fragments of my past life with my family, those little bits of minutiae that I found in drawers and made as collages and painted on top of, and the imagery that comes from fairy story or comes from the natural world around me, that whether I've celebrated it with colour or I've looked at the darker bits of it, I think they're all little bits of my life that I've brought together. I suppose what I was worried about with the exhibition was that it wouldn't hang together as an entire body of work, but actually, as you said, it does, because we all are going through different things that resonate with us in different ways at different times, and all the images are from me. And so they, you know, all have that, I suppose, that cast over them.
But I mean, you've always been interested in the figure, and in this body of work, there are a lot of strong portraits. And I think that says a lot as well, because people connect with people. And although we certainly relate very strongly to nature and the natural world, it's actually quite nice to have a whole exhibition where there's a lot of faces, and all women. Some are a bit more androgynous in terms of the way they've been painted, but they, they're not confrontational. These faces are there to be engaged with, and I think that's what's interesting about it. That often you might hear, I certainly hear people say, why would I want an image of somebody else on my wall? It's like, well, I wouldn't want an image of me on my wall. I'm more interested in that idea of a personality that's embodied in the portraits or the figures with their stories, and I suppose they are the vehicle for making you engage with the rest of the content of the images. And I think that's really powerful, that people do see images. I mean, we had, when we were putting up the show, I had a young woman with me who took one look at one of your images and went, that really looks like my friend, and it was quite a striking portrait, and she got out a photo, and I believe you yourself were quite surprised and go, blimey, it really does look like your friend. And so those portraits can spark other connections as well. You've got the faces and you've got the content, and I think the whole show is about connection. I think it always has been, but I think there is some quite, like you say, deep-rooted stories there that people are connecting to. And the collection of postcards is very interesting as well, because a lot of people are looking at them and don't actually realise they are classical images that have been painted over. And it's only when I then start pointing them out, this is that, and they really then look at them and go, oh, is that a Van Gogh? And is that Hockney? And oh yeah, that's a Frida Kahlo.
Yes, I feel naughty that I'm duetting with you.
but it's so fascinating, because people are looking at your images. They're not looking at originally they're looking at the images and they haven't realized that they're two things joined together. But then you've got this extra layer, you've got this extra story, and then people are then interested in how you've changed them and why you've changed them and why you've chosen that postcard and where's that come from. And so these small paintings go on quite a journey in people's minds, really.
Yes, they started, that series started because we had two moths we found in the garden, right. Emperor moths, and they both died. They were quite sizable moths. So I had them laying on top of a speaker, actually, for quite a while. And I was walking through the studio looking at them all the time. And I had one of my postcards, I'd taken a collection of postcards with me because I like to have lots of images around me. And I thought, actually, Agony in the Garden by Bellini, these two moths, like lovers that have died, in the garden. So I painted them on top of Agony in the Garden by Bellini with, I suppose, a female figure, myself, looking at the demise of these moths. And so that was, I think, the first one. And then I thought, actually, I really enjoyed doing that. I love that little painting so much. And that just started
off a series.
Took me on a little bit of a journey with those postcards. But so I am... when I saw the show up, I was really pleased that the work had come together, and hope that people really, don't see me,
yes,
that they do see themselves, as well, or they see people they know, or they can see a situation that I'm alluding to within the sort of suggested narratives that they can also resonate with. And that's what it's about. I mean, you know, I'm surrounded with my paintings in my studio, absolutely surrounded with all these eyes looking at me, but I never feel on my own.
No, absolutely.
I feel like I've got a lot of girls there that are all talking to me.
Yeah.
You know, and
Well, that's brilliant. So
yeah, some of the work, people have said they bought it and they can see themselves actually in the image, that whatever the woman's doing, they feel like they've done, or it has a power of an activity, or just the symbolism they associate with as an aspect of their life or what they've gone through.
and what's interesting is, although, as we've said, it's kind of about women and women's stories, the work resonates with men too, you know, and I think that's a really important thing to say, that this artwork is artwork. It's not just for women. It is artwork that has these stories, and it relates to everybody. You know, most people have got women in their lives, whether it's, you know, a mother, a sister, a daughter, a friend, and they're just strong, powerful, interesting, engaging images. And, you know, they create a lot of interest and a lot of discussion, and we're really enjoying showing the work. So is there anything else you would like to reveal about any of the images in your exhibition? Is there a hidden story you'd like to just throw out there about anything in particular?
Well, I always laugh when I talk to people about my work, about the fish image.
Yes.
It started off many years ago when I was at Brighton doing printmaking, and somebody said, "Oh, you know," one of my lecturers told a bad joke: if little girls made of sugar and spice, why do they smell of anchovies? So I started doing work about. I did a horrible, you know, drawing, because I thought it was so horrible. So when he came round to look at my work again, I'd drawn a picture called Stink, with a woman holding her nose and holding a fish, because it was a stinking joke, and I wanted to tell him off. And so then somebody saw this drawing and said, "Wow, that's a really good phallic symbol." And I said, no, it's not meant to be phallic. And then somebody else said, "Oh, that's really religious. That's got loads of Christian symbolism." And I thought, "Oh, wow, yeah, this is good." So I have, you know, that the symbol of the fish has been sort of with me for a long journey in sort of probably the past decade. I've been thinking of plentyoffish.com and the fish being an image for what we're striving for, what we're searching for, that never ending sort of search for either something within ourselves, or a life partner, or a creativity, or whatever it is, good health. We are beings that go through life looking, interacting, you know, and I suppose that fisherwoman has become quite an icon for me.
Yeah.
And I do love swimming.
Yeah, wow. Yeah.
That touching nature, back to the, you know, the brine. I don't know what it is, but it's a joyous, wonderful thing to be swimming in the sea, fish or no fish.
Well, interesting. So you've got fish in the sea and you've got birds in the sky. So there's definitely a kind of a call to the freedom of the wild, I think.
Yeah. And the images of women who look quite androgynous, I think that's also quite an interesting thing. Whether, you know, that's, I don't know where they came from particularly, because I don't necessarily set out to definitely paint androgynous women, but I think the older I get, the more I'm aware of my, I suppose, well, whether it's a male side, I don't know, but whether it's that lack of estrogen, I don't know. But it's that sort of passing from being a fertile woman to in a I suppose a medical sense, to being just a human being, but with all the experiences of being a woman. I also see or feel what it's like not to be such a big feminine woman, and see sort of more masculine traits in myself, traits from my father as well as my mother. And that's quite interesting as things are changing with me. So I don't know where that's going.
I think it's a great show, and so Lyn Hodnett's exhibition, Wild Women and Nature, continues at Cola Gallery until the 9th of July. There is 2 rooms full of her paintings. Come and enjoy. So Lyn Hodnett, thank you very much for speaking with us. And
thank you for having me, Karen.
You're welcome.
Cola Gallery.
Okay, thanks a lot. Cheers. Bye. Bye.